Right, the November 2016 paper. Question 1. Using the two axes below, show the difference between an increase in government spending and a decrease in the marginal propensity to consume on the equilibrium level of output and income in the goods market. Again, they might not have said in the goods market. You would have had to know which graph to actually draw for this. Okay, so goods market model, you got demand on your y-axis, you got output and income on your x-axis, you got your 45-degree line, and you've got your demand curve. Right, so again, that is your equilibrium position. In diagram 1, show a increase in government expenditure. To show an increase in government expenditure, we would shift the ZZ curve upwards by the change in government expenditure, and there would be a corresponding increase in output and income from Y0 to Y1. If there is a decrease in the marginal propensity to consume, it means essentially that people are saving more money and spending less money. If they're spending less money on goods and services, right, it means it will drive down the production of goods and services. We will pivot the demand curve downwards, and there will be a corresponding decrease in output and income. Right, question 2. Calculate by how much the equilibrium level of output and income will increase if government decreases taxes by 200 and the marginal propensity to consume is 8, or rather 0.8. Okay, so now to calculate the change in output and income via a tax change, you need to multiply it by the multiplier as well as the MPC. Okay, they've told us the MPC is 0.8, but what we need to do is calculate the multiplier. 1 over 1 minus C, 1 over 1 minus 0.8 equals 5. So that's the multiplier. If the government decreases tax by 200 times the multiplier times the MPC of 0.8, you will have a change in your output and income of 800. All right, question 2.1. Explain the concept of a liquidity trap. Okay, so essentially what the liquidity trap is when the interest rate is so low in the economy, right, that the SARB, in our case, cannot increase money supply to decrease interest rate. In a liquidity trap, the interest rate is so low that even if the SARB decreases the money supply, it does not increase the interest rate, it does not decrease the interest rate, and therefore does not stimulate money demand. So the money demand is at a certain level, and it is almost inelastic at that level. Essentially, they want money demand. They want people to go out and spend money and drive up production. But they cannot increase the money supply to stimulate the spending in the economy. All right. In this case, you wouldn't have to use the chain of events. No, it's just explaining what the liquidity trap is. Yeah, you can. Use the following axes to illustrate the impact of an increase in income with a simultaneous contractionary open market operation by the central bank on the interest rate in the financial market. Clearly indicate the impact on the equilibrium interest rate. Label both axes. All right, so they've already told you that they want you to draw the financial market. You've got interest rate on your y-axis. You've got quantity of money on your x-axis. Your money supply, independent curve, vertical line. Your money demand, and they will settle at an equilibrium interest rate. Let's call it I0. Okay, so income affects your money demand. Income is an exogenous variable, which means that it shifts your money demand curve in this case. Right, so increase in income. If income increases, people have more money to spend, and that's exactly what they will do. They will demand more money to spend more money. So if income increases, we shift the money demand curve to the right, to MD1, and that will increase your interest rate from I0 to I1. Then they say, with a simultaneous contractionary open market operation. Contractionary open market operation, contractionary monetary policy would shift the MS curve to the left. And you need to remember to use your new equilibrium point. So it's your new money demand curve and your new money supply curve. So that's a further increase in your interest rates. Question 3. A decrease in taxes and an increase in money supply can be used to increase the level of output and income in the economy, but they operate through different channels. Okay? So, both of those would be expansionary monetary policy and expansionary fiscal policies. Compare the impact of a decrease in taxes with that of an increase in money supply on the interest rate and investment spending in an ISLM model in a closed economy. ISLM, for a closed economy, you only draw the one ISLM model. Okay. Clearly indicate the shifts of and or movements along the curves in the diagrams. Okay. So, like I said earlier, if you've got a fiscal policy change, okay, you're going to shift your IS curve. But when you shift your IS curve, you're going to have an intermediate point. All right, there's going to be 3 points on your ISLM graph when you shift your IS curve. On the other hand, where you shift your LM curve, you're just going to have 2 points. You're going to have your initial equilibrium and your new equilibrium point. Right, so those are your start points for your ISLM. In graph A, you need to show the impact of a decrease in taxes. We use the goods market to derive the IS curve. A decrease in taxes is what? It's an expansionary fiscal policy, which means we would shift the IS curve to the right. Here's your IS curve shifting to the right to IS1. It increases the interest rate from I0 to I1, and it increases output and income to Y1. Sorry, hang on. I forgot the intermediate point. So there's point A, point B, and then point C. So essentially what will happen, we increase output and income from Y0 to Y1, and then we decrease it from Y1 to Y2. Right, your chain of events for your IS shift. Obviously a change in tax is in your goods market, so we start there. In your goods market, we have a decrease in tax, which increases your disposable income, increases consumption, increases demand, increases output and income. Nothing about the interest rates. So we need to use the financial market to show why there is a change in interest rates. Okay? Now, output and income increases, which increases the demand for money, and therefore the interest rate increases. Now, when you're talking about an IS curve shift, when you've got a fiscal policy change in your ISLM, you have to show, or you have to mention, the change in investment spending. Okay, because there is an increase in output and income as well as an increase in interest rate. Increase in output and income increases investment spending, but an increase in the interest rates decreases investment spending. So you need to mention that the final effect on investment spending is indeterminate. And then finally, you need to go back to your goods market model to show that an increase in interest rate decreases investment spending, decreases demand for goods and services, and therefore output and income. And that shows why we move from Y1 to Y2. When you shift your LM curve in graph number 2, it's a little bit more straightforward. A monetary expansion, monetary policy expansion, would shift the LM curve to the right. And you move straight from point A to point B. The chain of events start with your financial market. Money supply increases, which increases real money, money over price, and therefore decreases the interest rates. In your goods market, decreasing interest rate increases investment spending, the demand for goods increases, output and income increase. Because your output and income is increasing, consumption of goods and services increases as well. So you've explained both the decrease in interest rate and increase in output and income. All right, not in this question, but in your exam, they might take it one step further, and they might actually ask you to contrast these two policies. Now, what you can see is they're both expansionary policies, expansionary fiscal and expansionary monetary. But the difference between the two is the effect on the interest rate. So when you have an expansionary fiscal policy, yes, you've got an overall increase in output and income, but you've got a higher interest rate. Whereas in your monetary policy, an expansionary monetary policy, yes, increases your output and income, but it's at a lower interest rate. Okay. Question 4. Use a chain of events to indicate the impact of a depreciation on the nominal exchange rate on the demand for goods and the output and income level in the goods market for an open economy. Okay? So, if you've got an interest rate decrease, okay, you have got a capital outflow. Why? Because return on investment in other countries will be higher, so capital will leave South Africa. As it does, the nominal exchange rate will depreciate. The depreciation in the nominal exchange rate will stimulate exports. It will make them cheaper. It will decrease imports. Your net exports will increase and your output and income will increase. Does everyone understand that chain of events? In the ISLM model for an open economy, a contractionary monetary policy leads to a deterioration in the trade balance. Discuss using words or a chain of events. Okay, so whenever you're dealing with your ISLM model, whatever the impact is, whether it's a monetary change or a fiscal change, you need to incorporate both the goods market and the financial market. Because you've got a financial market variable, interest rate, as well as a goods market variable, output and income, on your axes of your ISLM, you're going to have to explain the movements in both of those, and you need to incorporate both the goods market and financial market in order to do so. Okay, so remember, ISLM, you need to bring in both the goods and financial markets. So they're talking about a contractionary monetary policy, which means that obviously you're going to need your money market first. Contractionary monetary policy is when the money supply decreases, real money decreases, and therefore your interest rate increases. So now we've explained the change in interest rate in our ISLM, but there is also a corresponding increase or decrease in the output and income, depending on what policy they've asked you for. Okay, so we've explained obviously the y-axis, now we have to explain the x-axis. Okay. In order to do that, we switch over to our goods market. In our goods market, increasing interest rate decreases investment spending, decreases the demand for goods and services, output of goods and services, consumption, and further output and income. Because they're talking about an ISLM for an open economy, you know that you need your interest parity relation as well, right? So now in your interest parity relation, to show the impact on our exchange rate, increasing interest rates causes a capital inflow. Nominal exchange rate appreciates, which decreases exports, increases imports because imports become cheaper, and therefore net exports deteriorates. Question 5. Use the following ADAS model to answer the question below. Okay, so assume that the shift in AD to AD1 is a result of an expansionary fiscal policy, which you already know because you can see we shifted it to the right. Use an events chain or words to explain what the impact on the level of output and income is in the medium run. Clearly indicate the short run and the medium run positions. Point number A is your initial equilibrium. Point B is your short run. Point C is your long run or medium run, same thing. A is your initial equilibrium, it's your starting point. B, your short run. C, your medium or long run. Right, so now in this question, they've only asked us to explain the medium run, but I'm going to take you through the short run as well, okay? So I'm going to take you through the change from AD to AD1, and then obviously your medium run, what they're asking you in this question is just the change in your AS, from AS to AS1, okay? Right, so we've got an increase in the aggregate demand. Let's start with our short run. In your goods market, right, government expenditure increases, demand for goods and services increases, output and income increases. Okay, so we've explained why output and income increases, but we haven't explained why prices increase. So in order for us to explain the effect on prices, we need to go through the financial market. Financial market, if output and income increases, money demand increases. If money demand increases, interest rates increase. Right, so you can see that both output and income has increased, and so has the interest rate. So if output and income increases, investment increases. Interest rates increase, investment decreases. Final effect is indeterminate. But we shift the AD right. We still haven't explained why prices change. In order to explain why prices change, you've got to go over to the labor markets. Okay? In the labor market, if output and income increases, employment increases, unemployment decreases, which increases the bargaining power of workers. Therefore, they bargain for higher nominal wages. Firms give them the higher nominal wages simply by increasing the price of their product. Remember, a markup over the nominal wage. In this case, we would move upward and along the AS curve from point A to point B. Point A to point B. That's where you would stop if they're asking you for the short run. In this question, you would only have to start from what we're doing now. In the long run, you work backwards. Start with your labor market and start with price expectations. Price expectations increase, workers bargain for higher nominal wages, prices further increase. The AS curve shifts to the left. Okay? Why does the AS curve shift to the left? You've got to think about the profit for your producers. If your cost of production increases, what is cost of production? In our case, wages. Wages increase, cost of production increases, supply of goods and services will decrease because it will be less profitable to supply these goods and services. Okay? In the financial and goods market, a price increase would decrease real money. Interest rate increases, investment spending decreases, demand for goods and services decrease, and output and income decreases. We move along the AD curve, and this is from point B to point C. Right, your multiple choice. The difference between expenditure on GDP and gross domestic expenditure is what? Okay, so what you need to remember is that gross domestic expenditure, or rather, gross domestic expenditure is our spending, South African spending. Okay, so when we spend money on goods and services, we spend them on imports. We do not spend them on exports. So GDE includes imports and excludes exports. But expenditure on GDP is spending on what we produce. We produce exports, but we do not produce imports. So GDP includes exports, but excludes imports. Okay. If they ask you to write down your equations for GDP and GDE, GDP is equal to C plus I plus G plus X minus IM. Okay? GDE, on the other hand, is equal to C plus I plus G. Now, you would think, why don't we say plus imports minus exports? Okay? Because obviously they don't want to make it too easy for you. If they do ask you for your equations, that's all you write. Okay. We assume that imports already form part of consumption, investment, and government expenditure. Right. So we do not write imports for GDE. Right. Question 2. Which of the following statements is correct? Based on the following information. All right, so we're talking about a budget surplus, a trade surplus, a financial account. Okay. A financial account measures your inflows and outflows of capital. More capital flowing in, financial account surplus. More capital flowing out, financial account deficit. Your current account measures imports and exports. More imports, less exports, current account deficit. More exports, less imports, current account surplus. Okay. Budget surplus or deficit, government expenditure and taxation. If government expenditure is greater than taxation, budget deficit. Taxation greater than government expenditure, budget surplus. Right. So in this case, there will be a financial account deficit equal to 50. Why? Because we've got a capital outflow of 170, capital inflow of 120. 120 minus 170 minus 50 deficits. Budget deficit of 70. Government spending is 150. Taxation is only 80. Negative 70. Trade deficit of 200. We're importing 500, exporting 300. 300 minus 500 minus 200 deficits. Question. Given the following information, all right, so this is obviously your calculation of the equilibrium income. Definitely going to get this in your exam in some or other form. Okay? Now, the equilibrium level of output and income is what? Okay? To calculate that, your y is equal to multiplier times your autonomous variables. Your multiplier in this case would be 4. You know this because you're dealing with 0.75. Your output and income is your autonomous components and you should get an answer of 2620. Sorry, let me rewrite that a little bit more legibly. Times your tax rate, and your tax rate is 60. So when you're doing these equations, you need to remember to minus your tax, but you need to multiply it by your MPC. Which of the following will ensure that the level of full employment is reached? Okay, so again, same methodology. You need to take what your current level of output and income is. You need to subtract it from the full employment level of output and income, but then you need to divide that difference by the multiplier, and then you'll see how much your whatever needs to change by. Government expenditure, investments, autonomous consumption, whatever the case is. All right? Okay, so this one's slightly different because they gave you the options already. So, an increase in government spending of 60, how will that affect our output and income? Firstly, what is our income gap? Okay. The full employment level was 2860. So 2860 minus the 2620 gives us 240. That's what we need to change by. That's what the income gap needs to change by. Right, but if we do it via a change in the government expenditure, there is a direct impact, okay? So to calculate the change in government expenditure, you've got to work backwards. Y is equal to your government expenditure times your multiplier. They've already given us the output and income needs to change by 240 times G times your multiplier, which is 4. So you work backwards. 240 divided by 4 equals the change in government expenditure, 60. Okay. So an increase in government spending of 60 million is correct. They can do that. Option B, a decrease in taxes of 80 million. Okay, so if we decrease taxes by 80 million, right, to calculate the effect on output and income, tax is multiplied by the multiplier and the marginal propensity to consume. So if you work backwards from that, to get a change in taxation of 80 million, which is correct. And then the third one, an increase in government spending of 30 million. What you would do is you would substitute that government expenditure change into this equation, and a decrease of tax, you would substitute it into that equation. I'm not going to do it. You'd get 120 for each of them, and that would be the correct option. So it is number 1. Does everybody understand how to use those two calculations? Change in taxation, change in government expenditure. The only difference between the two is you multiply the change in tax by the MPC. Right. You multiply them both, obviously, by your multiplier. Question 5. Which of the following statements is correct? Diagram A is a change in autonomous spending. We shifted the curve. Diagram C represents what we call a balanced budget multiplier. You just need to remember this diagram. We've shifted up by the change in government expenditure. We've shifted down by the change in tax. Even though they're the same amount, so government expenditure increased by 100, taxation increased by 100, there is a difference between the two because we multiply the change in tax by the multiplier. Oh, sorry, by the MPC. Okay, so it lessens the effect. D, all 3 diagrams, the multiplier is in operation. The multiplier is always in operation when you're dealing with your goods market model. Okay. What is your multiplier? A change in any of the autonomous variables will have a greater impact on your output and income because of the multiplier. So for question 5, the correct option would be 4. Right, some straightforward theory. Question 6. Which of the following is correct regarding the financial market? It would be option 4, A and D. Question 7, you need to know your exogenous as well as your endogenous variables in your ISLM and your ADAS graph. Okay, so I've seen a nice question in the exam. List the nominal and real variables in your ADAS graph for like 8 marks. Right. Quite a few of them, you need to remember all of them. In this case, which of the following is an endogenous variable in the ISLM? It is the level of output and income. Question, or rather option B. Question 8. Which of the following statements is correct regarding the ISLM curve? Now, it would be option A. Remember, fiscal policy shifts your IS curve, monetary policy shifts your LM curve. Fiscal policy shifts your IS curve, monetary policy shifts your LM curve. Expansionary shifts them to the right, contractionary shifts them to the left. Yeah, in this case, it would be only A. Wow, which one? Right, question 9. Which of the following statements is incorrect? It would be 4. Question 10. A movement from point A to point B on the LM curve, option 2, indicates that the demand for money increases. Question 11. Which of the following policy actions will cause a decline in the budget deficit and an increase in the level of output and income? It would be option 3. Remember this question, quite a popular one. Right, question 12. It's incorrect, so don't worry about that one. Question 13. This is the return on your investment in South Africa versus America. Again, all you need to remember is to take into account your exchange rate movement. It will either benefit you or it will not benefit you, depending on which way it moves. Okay? In this case, the answer would be 2. Question 14. Which of the following are correct? It is B and C, option 1. Question 15. Now again, remember, this is your goods market in an open economy where you draw your net exports curve. Net exports, the difference between exports and imports. Change in foreign demand, we shift the graph. Change in domestic demand, we move along the graph or move along the curve. Okay. So diagram A and B in this case would be a change in foreign demand because we've actually shifted the net exports curve. Diagram C, we've moved along the net exports curve. It is a change in local demand. Okay. And your correct option would be option 1. Question 16, the answer is 2. Question 17, also found there was an error in the paper. It's either 3 or 5. It's between 2 of those 2. Question 18, it is option 4. So now this is your wage setting relationship, okay? Nominal wage is equal to price expectations, okay? And a function of the unemployment rate and the catch-all variable Z, okay? You need to know the relationship of the nominal wage to both of these, or all 3 of these variables, okay? There is a positive relationship with price expectations. So, positively related to price expectations and negatively related to the unemployment rate, positively related to the catch-all variable Z. Remember, we assume that workers want to hold a real purchasing power in their wallet. So if they expect prices to increase, they want to keep their real purchasing power the same. In order to do so, they need a higher nominal wage to buy the same goods and services because the price has increased. Okay. For your unemployment rate, it lowers the bargaining power as it increases. If unemployment rate increases, it lowers the bargaining power of workers and they cannot bargain for higher nominal wages. It has a negative effect on nominal wage. Okay? Your catch-all variable Z, that is your unemployment benefits, labor laws, etc. If any of those increase, it increases the bargaining power of workers and therefore they can bargain for higher nominal wages, positively related. Okay. Number 19, which of the following statements is correct? It would be only B and C. So it is those factors that would shift the wage setting and price setting relations. Right, we covered them in the last exam, but you need to remember them as well. Now, in your labor market, you've got your wage setting relation and price setting relation, and you've got an unemployment rate. What you need to remember is that this unemployment rate is what we call the natural rate of unemployment. So in the previous exam we did, or rather we wrote down the definition of the natural rate of unemployment, and we said it occurs where the wage setting and price setting relations intersect or are equal to each other. We said where real wage implied by wage setting relation is equal to the real wage implied by price setting relation. That is the point of intersection. Okay. So it would be option 3. In this case, the natural rate of unemployment increases if the markup increases. Remember, if we increase markup, we shift the price setting relation downwards, and it increases the unemployment rate. Question 21, looking at the aggregate supply curve, you need to know the different variables. The factors of the supply curve would be option 4. With regards to the AS curve, which of the following statements is correct? It would be option 3. 23, the reason for the negative slope of the AD curve is because of option 2, the chain of events. 24, if the economy is initially operating at the natural level of output and income in the ADAS, suppose an increase in the money supply takes place, what will that do? Increase in money supply, expansionary monetary policy, we shift the AD curve to the right. Increase in the supply of money will, in the medium run, cause what? So now they're not actually asking for that initial movement in the AD curve. They're asking for the medium run. They're asking for the reaction of the AS curve. Right. And it would be A, C, and D, option 5. And finally, question 25, which of the following statements are correct? It would be all of them, so option 5.